Now, let's queer up the worldview.
Yeah.
Uganda modeled its LGBTQ plus death law on U.S. Supreme Court's anti-abortion ruling. Uganda's highest court upheld a law criminalizing same-sex relationships, drawing inspiration from the U.S. Supreme Court anti-abortion ruling. The Anti-Homosexuality Act 2023 imposes severe penalties, including lengthy prison sentences and even death for those involved in same-sex sexual activity. Despite a petition seeking to overturn the law, the court ruled against it, referencing the U.S. Supreme Court Dobbs v. Jackson decision as precedent. The justice wrote that Dobbs v. Jackson is a decision that where, quote, the court considered the nation's history and traditions as well as the dictates of democracy and rule of law to overrule the broader right to individual autonomy, end quote. In the Dobbs v. Jackson case, the Supreme Court overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, which had safeguarded the right to abortion. Mark Pocan, a Democratic congressman from Wisconsin who is openly gay and chairs the Congressional Equality Caucus, has previously confronted conservative American organizations regarding their ties to AHA 23. He expressed concern, stating that the Ugandan Constitutional Court, drawing inspiration from the Dobbs decision to uphold Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act, is deeply troubling. He said, quote, the mention and misapplication of Dobbs by Ugandan court was no accident. There are U.S. organizations that celebrated the Dobbs decision who are also championing LGBTQ plus legislation abroad. It's kind of amazing to hear that a country, that it's obviously not nearly as progressive as we hope the United States is using our own court decisions to pass such a horrific act against the gay community. And it just goes to say that, when we started to hear about the ruminations of, why do we have to get out the vote, right? And what does that mean? And that voting has consequences. And, Donald Trump lived up to his
consequences.
Yeah. Well, he lived up to what he said he was going to do was he was going to support appointing Supreme Court justices that were going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And he said it again, I think just again yesterday, that he was, very excited about it. And then he supports that these states' rights rules, which means that currently, 1/3 of the states have no access to abortion or limited access to abortion. And that is just a slippery slope where, again, as we can see, it's being interpreted in Uganda, but they're using that same legislation to interpret it in ways to reflect or to take away our own rights. So again, I don't think we can say it enough, and I'll say it again.
Say it again.
Voting matters, so get involved, give your time, treasure, and get out there and help spread the word to get out the vote.
So this story actually highlights something that I've been noticing happening with our language. Let me be the linguistics person for a second.
Yeah.
The rule of law is a phrase that doesn't really show up in our nomenclature, the words we use, until recently. And it's starting to trickle in more and more into how we talk about our democracy. We used to talk about freedoms and we used to talk about, all the good things. Now we want to talk about rule of law. Do you know who popularized the phrase rule of law?
Who?
Dictators in China. And so I think just be aware of when that phrase starts to get thrown around, what's really going on. That's my concern.
I guess from my point of view, I second what you're saying. It's frightening to think of a country using our system and as a model for what they're trying to put in place right there. But what can we do from an action standpoint other than obviously get out and vote? But what could we do tonight outside of every single person share this, news show on your platforms and keep bringing awareness to the horrible things that are happening everywhere? But what do we think is one action we could take tonight to make this more of an uphill battle as opposed to just going all the way down?
I think it's important that we find the right people that have the ability to engage in this conversation that can bring more exposure to it. So stories like this don't always get the traction it deserves. It's, getting traction with us because we care a lot. But you're not going to see a lot of this on CNN maybe. Even CNN's a friend to us. So I just think that getting this storyline and getting somebody that's within our community, that a David Geffen, an Elton John, somebody that's an ally, somebody needs to jump on that story and become a leader of it and push it and push it and push it. And if we can create the exposure to it, it's amazing how all of a sudden quick things, quick fixes, at least, a conversation is being had that makes it very clear that we're not going away. We're not going to stop talking about it. But more importantly, we're going to find people in our community that can go fight these things. And you and I both know the bigger the name, the more money behind it, the better chance we have at a fix.
So, Bobby, you're going to be the man behind it, right?
I was going to say, we're going to
Pioneering. Jeff can handle the financial side.
Yeah. Well, but I do think it's very important, again, that visibility that we bring to the table is, again, sharing your own story, whether it's in your workplace, if you're not in a, diverse workplace, whether it's with, groups of friends or family, to tell, again, a lot of this legislation sounds they tailor it here in the United States to sound very non-threatening.
Right.
Like the Don't Say Gay bill was parents' rights for education. And it sounded very, but it's really telling the story of how this could personally impact you. I mean, women don't have to really tell that story any longer because, again, trying to get an abortion in Florida as of May 1st will be within 6 weeks.
Right.
So that story is very easy to tell, but it's not as easy to tell sometimes for how this affects the trans community with restrictions to healthcare, or how it affects the community of the queer community, of just being accepted in whether it's the workplace, in schools, in universities, and how they're being restricted and how they're being, really kind of taught that they're second-class citizens.
Right.
So I think it's just being visible.